26 executive orders on day one. Whether you like it or not, Trump has been a very busy man. I think it's very important to stay up to date on what's going on in the White House. So today we're going to go through every executive order Trump signed on January 20th, his first day in office. I'll be going through all 26 and I'll give a brief explanation about what they are, what they do, and give my own rating on a scale of 1 to 5. Alright, starting off with Executive Order 14147, ending the weaponization of the federal government. This executive order mainly serves two roles, the first being basically an audit of the previous administration and seeing how they weaponized the federal government against Trump. Trump believes that there was a witch hunt against him and his family. This order opens with, "The American people have witnessed the previous administration engage in a systematic campaign against its perceived political opponents." It goes on later to say, "These actions appear oriented more toward inflicting political pain than toward pursuing actual justice." And I think there's a lot of truth to these claims. Historically, the government has not been shy about using its power to try to sway elections, especially against Trump. I of course acknowledge the reason why they've been able to do that is because he has some serious skeletons in his closet. But even with that said, they've gone after some of the smaller charges and, for lack of a better word, trumped them up to attack him and try to derail his campaign. This executive order basically states that the federal government has the right to audit any potential election interference. While this is a very politically motivated executive order, which I personally am not a huge fan of, I believe this order does set a good precedent in keeping the federal government accountable and holding them accountable for any potential election interference. I give it 4 stars. Executive Order 14148, Initial Rescissions of Harmful Executive Orders and Actions. This order acts as basically a giant undo button for a lot of the executive orders Biden had put in his administration. Of the 66 executive orders that were overturned, 21 of them were for basically DEI, 11 climate change, 11 more revolving around COVID, which are kind of obviously needing to be overturned since COVID is not a major issue anymore. 8 of them involved the border, mostly loosening restrictions on the border, and then the last 15 was just a bunch of generic, mostly bureaucratic things. Although there's one exception that I think is a huge misstep for Trump. The one that I felt was not really defensible in overturning was Executive Order 14087, lowering prescription drug costs for Americans. This restricted the power of major pharmaceutical companies and their control over how the drugs are priced. Overturning this order is a huge blow to the American people, and it gives more power to Big Pharma, and it lets them jack up the prices as much as they want. The biggest, most immediate effect of reversing this order is the price of insulin, which Joe Biden capped at $36. Now there is no limit and Big Pharma can charge whatever they would like. The pharmaceutical industry has always had a firm grip on the people who are reliant on prescription medications and the pockets of the people in government. Overall, this one order being overturned kind of negates all the other 65 that needed to be overturned, and it really lowers the rating. I give it a 1.5. Executive Order 14149, Restoring Freedom of Speech and Ending Federal Censorship. This order is fairly self-explanatory given the name, with a small emphasis on the Biden administration. The main focus is protecting the First Amendment. This is very important for a free people. I give it 5 stars. Executive Order 14150, American First Policy Directive to the Secretary of State. This order does very little actual substantive work. It's more of a symbolic gesture. While the idea of America putting American interests first is a priority of this administration, especially in modern conflict, I'm looking at you, Israel and Ukraine, there is not a whole lot of actionable change here. Great message, not much substance. 3 stars. Executive Order 14151, Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. This order's main purpose is to overturn Executive Order 13985 signed by Biden. The main purpose of this order is to focus on merit over race or sexual identity. While diversity is our strength, it is diversity of thought, not a diversity of where you were born or who you sleep with. I am all for the prioritization of skills over checklists. 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14152, holding former government officials accountable for election interference and improper disclosure of sensitive governmental information. Another order for fighting the interference of the federal government in elections. This order references the Hunter Biden laptop scandal and how certain people in the federal government, especially the CIA, coerced people in the media to criticize its legitimacy despite knowing that it's true. It also revokes the clearance of over 50 people, including some of Trump's former advisors who abused their powers to mislead the American people. The less that the federal government can interfere with elections, the better. 5 stars. Executive Order 14153. Unleashing America's Extraordinary Resource Potential. This executive order could be renamed Drill Baby Drill. It basically frees Alaska of the restrictions implemented under the Biden administration and encourages energy independence. I'm definitely in favor of becoming less reliable on Russia and the Middle East for our oil. While loosening restrictions can cause problems and potential accidents, being strangled by other countries and outsourcing our energy is raising the price and creates potential loss of gains from within. I give it 4 stars. Executive Order 14154. Unleashing American Energy. More or less the same thing as the previous one, plus removing the EV mandate and the restrictions on some appliances. As a fan of electric vehicles, I also understand that the infrastructure is nowhere near ready to support a mostly electric vehicle motor industry. Heavy-duty vehicles and long-distance traveling are not feasible with EVs currently. This order reverses the mandate to switch all new vehicles to electric only, as well as freeing up more opportunities for oil. 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14155. Withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. Fairly self-explanatory given the title. After the COVID-19 debacle and the WHO intentionally lying to the American people, while maybe for a noble cause, they destroyed the trust of most Americans. This order also creates a plan that creates a similar group that will, quote, identify credible and transparent United States and international partners to assume necessary activities previously undertaken by the WHO. Trust is very important, and this is a solid step to rebuild that with the American people. While this still leaves room for Big Pharma to sway policies, removing the US from the WHO is a step in the right direction. 4 stars. Executive Order 14156. Declaring a national energy emergency. Similar to the other 2 orders involving energy, the main difference being this order calls for the utilization of our oil and energy reserves and prioritizes lowering the cost of energy. I love lower prices. 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14157. Designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, and specially designated global terrorists. National security being the main focus of this order, as its name suggests, it classifies all cartel members as foreign terrorists. It says, quote, to ensure the total elimination of these organizations' presence in the United States. With how violent these cartels can be and how they can overpower local governments like they did in Mexico, removing and addressing them as terrorists is crucial to protecting our fellow citizens. 5 stars. Executive Order 14158. Establishing and implementing the President's Department of Governmental Efficiency. Doge, a very controversial topic. Doge is being led by Elon Musk with the help of some genitalia in cutting governmental waste. The government is notorious in its inefficiency, and getting audited by one of the most prolific and intense businessmen in the world could greatly help our bottom line. How this is actually done is very important and requires absolute transparency. I don't think Elon Musk is going to steal your grandparents' social security checks, but the inevitable conflicts of interest cause a huge potential problem. With a few more safeguards, this order would have been way better. As it stands, 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14159. Protecting the American people against invasion. We can't really argue with this order, as it basically just says, we will enforce the immigration laws we already have. You would think this is unnecessary, but with how the Biden administration's handled the enforcement of these laws, it kind of became necessary to have an order like this. 5 stars. Executive Order 14160. Protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. This order does attract some controversy about the 14th Amendment, the amendment which states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The main purpose of this order is to highlight that anyone born on U.S. territory whose parents have entered illegally does not receive citizenship, anchor babies as are known. The grounds being the, quote, subject to the jurisdiction thereof disqualifies those who have broken the law to be here. After Congress reaffirmed this in 2004 with 8 U.S. Code 1401, I think I'm saying that right, there is more clarity on the constitutionality of this order. Without this in place, America would be the only country in the world that would allow parents to enter illegally and still have their children gain citizenship. I think this is constitutional and logical. 5 stars. Executive Order 14161. Protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. What should be non-controversial, this order implements stricter screening of those seeking visas to enter and remain in the US. The only downside to this would be making it harder for hardworking immigrants who want to enter, but the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. As the son of immigration, I personally like this a lot. 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14162, putting America first in international and environmental agreements. Mainly just pulling America out of the Paris Agreement and focusing on the freedom of the current forms of energy. While I think that big oil has caused many problems and needs to be held accountable on many fronts, I also believe that we need to be able to use our current resources until reasonable green solutions are available to the general population. Right now, renewable solar and wind power is not practical, as well as electric vehicles to the vast majority of middle to low income Americans. I may disagree with many of you on this one, which that's not new, but this order is something we've needed for a while. 4 stars. Executive Order 14163, realigning the United States Refugee Admissions Program. While taking in refugees is definitely a good thing for the US as the only real superpower in the world, we must be careful and selective. It is not practical to take those who have no real threat and are only seeking to take advantage of the US's generosity. This order pauses the entrance of refugees until better screening procedures have been implemented. Once it resumes, there is an added caveat of, quote, only those refugees who can fully and appropriately assimilate into the United States, which I believe is necessary to a proper system. As a wise economist once said, import the third world, become the third world. While that would take decades for the whole US to become a lesser state, smaller communities will see the immediate effects. We cannot hold American values if those entering do not hold the same. 5 stars. Executive Order 14164, restoring the death penalty and protecting public safety. I'm starting to notice a trend of controversial topics here. This order does exactly what the name says. The main target of the death penalty here, though, is those who have killed law enforcement officers and those in our country illegally. Personally, I don't support the death penalty, but many people do. It's added that the states have the right to implement this if they so choose. While my opinion is against this, the many Americans who support this should have a say. 3 stars. Executive Order 14165, securing our borders. Very simple and resonant of 2016 Trump. Build a wall, a great wall. This order mostly calls for the completion of the wall and adding more border patrol. Also for the deportation of illegals currently in the US. This is what the vast majority of Americans were voting for in 2024, especially legal immigrants. 0 issues here, 5 stars. Executive Order 14166, application of Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act to TikTok. This order calls for the shutdown of TikTok if its ownership and management does not change. The main issue being the data harvested and the manipulation by an adversarial nation. While I am a staunch free speech advocate, I believe it is the main pillar of a free society. I also have a strong disdain for TikTok and other brain rot apps. But national security above all, this is still a pretty good implementation. 3.5 stars. Executive Order 14167, clarifying the military's role in protecting the territorial integrity of the United States. In fewer words, sending the military to protect the border. While this may seem excessive, the amount of power and control the cartels currently have in Mexico can be astonishing. Using our military on US soil is definitely preferred to fighting foreign proxy wars in the Middle East or in Europe. This is a much better use of our defense budget. 4.5 stars. Executive Order 14168, defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. Oh boy, more controversy. This order defines that there are 2 sexes, male and female, and that they are defined exclusively by biology. While there are some exceptions, the rules are for the generalities. Around 0.02% of people in the US are currently considered biologically intersex. This order protects women, their sports, and their spaces from males. 5 stars. Executive Order 14169, reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid. This order pauses all new foreign aid obligations for 90 days and will resume after internal review. With some of the programs we've been funding coming to light via Doge, this is a good step in ensuring we aren't encouraging behavior antithetical to our beliefs. 5 stars. Executive Order 14170,
reforming the federal hiring process and restoring merit to government service.
Another step in a merit-based hiring system, this order reprioritizes ability over intersectionality. As MLK famously said, we should judge people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. We need more people in the government who hold classic American values and are skilled in their professions. It is imperative that we pursue people with aptitude and ethics in filling government offices. 5 stars.
Executive Order 14171, restoring accountability to policy influencing positions within the federal workforce.
This order has 2 main purposes, one being reinstating and making some amendments to Executive Order 13957 that commands higher flexibility in hiring and firing of skilled civil servants. The second being the revoking of Executive Order 14003, which gave more bargaining power to the federal employees. These orders have kind of been battling out over the years. The federal government should have the ability to choose who it employs, but the constant flip-flopping and changing does tend to lead to inconsistencies. This order gives more control directly to the president, which is one step closer to monarchical control. While having pros and cons, this order adds unnecessary level of power to the presidential office. 2 stars.
Executive Order 14172, restoring names that honor American greatness.
Wow, what an order to end on. After so much substantive and important change, we end on this one. I don't see a whole lot of meaning behind this one. It calls for the renaming of Denali back to Mount McKinley and the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Renaming Denali to Mount McKinley seems kind of fickle, considering President McKinley never even set foot in Alaska and had little to no involvement with the Alaskan culture. The main reason his name was chosen for this mountain was political, and because a prospector thought it would honor him after his assassination. This makes no logical sense. The Gulf of Mexico, however, does seem to be more sensible, considering many Spanish speakers, especially in Central America, consider themselves American, meaning the American continents. The main reason for this change, supposedly, is to hypervent certain drilling restrictions that are addressed to the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know how credible that is, but that's just some of the articles I've been reading. All of this seems kind of petty and unnecessary. 1 star. Well, that's all 26 executive orders signed on the first day of Trump's second term. Let me know what your thoughts are on all these executive orders, which ones you want me to dive deeper into, and how I was so wrong on all of these ratings. There was a lot of research I had to do for this, and I very much appreciate you watching till the end. Until next time, adios.